we're going.
Right, we're going, right. So, for Spearman's rank, what we need to work out is the D. I hate this class. It's the D. So, 1 minus 2.
Why don't you say difference?
Great. We'll work out the difference. Then 2 take away 1 will be 1. So can we see that the difference is between minus 1 and plus 1 all the way along? So, if we add together all the values of d squared, that's going to be 1 every single time, isn't it? And so we're going to do this n times. So the sum of all the squares of differences is going to be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 all the way along. So that's going to give us a value of n. And that's the crucial bit in this, that we need to spot that that would be the case. So now when we come to do our Spearman's rank calculation, we're going to say now that 1 minus 6 sigma d squared over n squared minus 1 is 63 over 65. We're going to get 1 mark for writing that down to start with. We know now that that bit is equal to n, so this is 1 minus 6n over n squared minus 1 is 63 65ths. That n will cancel out, so we don't need to worry about any cubic equations that we're going to get. If we rearrange this, we've got 1 minus 63 over 65, that's 2 over 65, whoops, still green, is now 6 over n squared minus 1. Rearrange that to give us 2 lots of n squared minus 1 is 6 times 65, which is quite a lot. Is it, what's that, 390, is it? Is that right? So n squared minus 1 is 195. So if we add the 1, n squared is 196, and square root it. And of course n is the number of judges. It's the number of, not number of judges, number of terms, isn't it? The number of competitors. So n has to be an integer and it has to be a positive whole number. So we can reject minus 14 and give our answer as n equals 14. Yeah.
I got all that, but I only got 3 marks.
I'll come and have a look in a moment. The next bit, I ignore that John. The next bit says, now this is quite interesting because quite a few people didn't get all the marks that they should have done for this. An experiment produced some data from a bivariate distribution. The product moment correlation coefficient is R and Spearman's rank is RS. Explain why the statement R equals 1 implies that RS equals 1 is true or false. Well, this bit, that should be kind of a fairly standard thing that we know. If R equals 1, what does that mean? How do we interpret that?
Perfect correlation.
But more than just that. It means it's a straight line. That's exactly it. It means it's a straight line. So if R equals 1 implies the data must be in a straight line. If the data is in a straight line, then they must be in ranked order, because there's no alternative. So if the pointer is a straight line, it must be in ranked order, and that means that RS must be equal to 1. So that bit's kind of quite straightforward. To say that it's true, we better write that it's true. So that's part A sorted. Part B, use a diagram to explain whether the statement, if R is not equal to 1, that implies that RS is not equal to 1, is true or false. In other words, if R is not equal to 1, is it possible for RS still to be equal to 1? Or must that also be not equal to 1? And use it, it did say use a diagram, so that didn't give you a choice of using a diagram. It didn't say if you would like to. It it said you have to use a diagram. So we must come up with a diagram to illustrate this. You've got a couple of choices of how you could draw your diagram. You could draw your diagram as a kind of exponential curve. Because in that case there, if you look, as we look at the points, as x goes up, y goes up, so they're all in order, but they're not in a straight line. So that would show that it was false. That in this case rs equals 1, but r is not equal to 1. That's not a straight line. Therefore false. And that's quite a neat way of drawing it. Or you could have gone for the kind of stepped zigzag effect, but you have to be really careful with this to make sure that you get the steps right. So we could have done something like does that work? Something like that. I find that one a little bit more difficult to draw, and quite a few of you did as well, because what tended to happen was you get one of the points just creeping the wrong side of the other one, so you end up with that point being there instead, and suddenly you've destroyed your perfect ranked correlation. So you have to be really careful when drawing it like that, but that gives the same thing. That would still have rs equals 1, but r would not be equal to 1, and so that would prove that it was false again. Okay? And that's maths.